What the hell just happened in Georgia? Oh my God. All right, so I've got some really good news and some really bad news. It's about as bad as it gets for me. I spend a lot of time working on these videos and this YouTube channel. I haven't been that active lately, but I thought this was going to be my big come out video for 2021. And I just took a trip down to Georgia. So let's talk through some of the different things that happened. First of all, going to Georgia was going to be kind of a strange trip this year because I was going to drive to my mom's. First of all, I was driving, period. Usually I fly down and my brother-in-law picks me up. But I was going to drive to my mom's, go hang out with my mom, have dinner, wake up the next day early, and finish the trip to Tifton with my brother-in-law and Pat. So everything's going fine. You know, when you're trying to wind down work and get out of the office and get out of the area where you're working, it never goes the way you want it to. It seems to just get worse. But we finally got on the road. Pat and I were finally uncorking a little, got down to my mom's house, and we had some barbecue. We hung out. We listened to a little music. We went to bed early because we knew it was a cracking day the next day. And so we hit the road about 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, and we were in Tifton by like 2 o'clock. Now, before we left for the trip, both Pat and Doug called me. Pat first called me and said, dude, have you seen the rain down in Atlanta? And apparently they got hit with some horrific rains and stuff. But Tifton, luckily, was a lot further south. And I was like, Pat, just relax. We're going. We're doing this. Don't worry. He's like, okay. And then I talked to my brother-in-law, Doug, and he goes, Joe, have you looked at the weather? And I go, what, the rain? He goes, no. I go, what? He goes, the cold front. I'm like, what, in Georgia? And he goes, dude, it's going to be like 36 degrees both nights. And I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah. So I was like, okay. I said, well, let's just take sleeping bags and we'll take different kind of clothing and we'll just make sure we stay warm. He's like, all right. We overcome all of our apprehensions and we get down to Georgia, only to find out that Friday, the day we were going to fish the whole entire day, was going to be super windy. And I was really bummed because I had the puddle jumper, bass boat, I had a kayak. And when you put those little boats out on windy water, it's like you spin like a top. It's a nightmare. Ends up probably one of the best 8-hour fishing days I've ever had in my entire life. I mean, I went to Canada at Pipestone Lake and we caught smallies all day. And I don't even think we caught as many fish as we did this trip. And it was on the cheap. We took a tent. We were in the backwoods. No amenities, no toilets, no showers. The only thing we would do is go into town every night, wash our hands and faces and eat a nice dinner and then come back out to the tent and get ready for the next day. So there was only one day of fishing. And it started off with a bang. We all hit the pond. Everybody hit their spots. And I just kind of stayed close to the truck. There was a shady bank and I wasn't looking for shade. It just happened to be a shady bank and there was a lot of grass. And I remember when I was fishing down there before that these fish would come out of that grass and just attack things. So I had this chatterbait. It was the Z-Man jackhammer chatterbait in the Fire Craw, and it had the Big Bites trailer that matches it perfectly. I'll throw it up on the screen and I'll put it down in the notes so you can go get this combination. I took about 2 or 3 casts. I caught a 1.5, 2 pound bass, threw it back, kept fishing, and on the video, when I'm catching this fish, you can actually hear me saying, I don't know why these guys left this juicy bank all to myself. You know, I was being funny. And as I'm reeling it in, I thought I was snagged. You know, it felt like a stump and it just stopped. I mean, 1 minute you feel the chatterbait, the next minute you don't. And I'm like, oh, I'm in grass or I'm stuck. And all of a sudden it just moves like 3 feet to the right. And I'm like, holy crap, I have a fish. So I'm reeling down on this thing. And, you know, it's grabbing a little drag and next thing you know, it jumps and I see the mouth and I'm like, it's a big one. So I get it in. And at this point I'm thinking it's a 5.5. And I run down to the bank and I grab it by the mouth and I put my thumb in there. And when I pulled it up and opened its mouth and kind of pulled it out of the water, I was like, this might be a 7. So I'm woo-hooing my way down the path. I'm asking Pat for a scale. And Pat comes down with his scale. It weighed 7 pounds, 1 ounce. This is what I would technically call my personal best. I've never had a weighed fish over like 5.5, 6 pounds. I think there was maybe one fish prior to that that might have been the same weight, but this was just huge. And I was so excited. I got my personal best within the first 15 minutes of fishing. And I thought, man, my day is set. And it was. I mean, the rest of the day. Now, let me paint the picture. Super bright sun, 55 degrees. So crispy, cool air, the most intense sun you've ever had. I mean, like Florida sun, burning your lips, burning your face, burning your hands. All the while, you can't tell because it's so cool, but super windy. I'm talking like 2 or 3 inch chop on some of this water sometimes. It's hitting so hard and it's so windy. And I'm thinking, we're never going to catch fish. This is going to be awful. And what do you put on when it's windy? A spinnerbait. Me and Pat get a spinnerbait bite out in the middle of this pond. I swear to God, I think we pulled out 35 fish. Now, they were all 1.5 pounds, 2 pounds, 1.25 pounds, but it was like cast 3 times, pulling a fish, cast 3 times, pulling a fish. And him and I must have done 20 each between us. It was insane. Friday, the whole day was just off the hook, stellar. We all caught fish. We fished 4 different ponds. 2 of them yielded the most. A couple of the other ones were okay. But by the time we were done, I'd say 100 fish between 3 guys, easy. And I'm not exaggerating. I'm serious, like 35, 40 fish each. We went home, went to sleep, had some just great times at the camp because it was so cold and ridiculous. I mean, we were in stitches laughing half the time because it was so insane. The next morning we got up, it was Saturday when we were going to leave. And there was ice on the tent. And we found that out because I turned on the heater and it just started dripping all inside the tent. And we were like laughing because we're like, why is it raining in the tent? But it was all the ice melting. What they do down there when they get a frost, and I didn't know this, and now it explains why when you drive through certain areas of the country and you smell that smoke, like a fire, like a brush fire smoke, a lot of times when farmers plant their crops and there's a frost warning or a frost potential, they'll burn hay bales. They get those big wheel, the round ones, and they'll set them on a bed of coals and they'll smolder these hay bales all night long. They'll layer the terrain with a bunch of smoke, which I guess keeps the frost from settling in on the crops and freezing things. So I woke up the next morning and there was this complete smoky haze. And then when we pulled into the farm pond to do our last 2 hours of fishing, you could see what was burning and what was going on. We had 2 hours left to fish before we left on Saturday. Pat was a little disturbed because he hadn't caught anything over 5. He caught plenty of 2s, 3s, and 4s, but he hadn't caught anything over 5, which we would consider a big fish. And he was really kind of bummed because he saw me catch the 7 and he's like, dude, I just want to get my big fish. I want a personal best. And I'm like, well, we got a little bit of time. Let's knock it out. So Pat goes and we fish and he goes in the shallow corner and he's tossing a black spro, which seemed to be the ticket. This black frog with the bright, high bluebird skies seemed to really draw the fish. And he said when this bass hit his fish, he said it came up from underneath. You could see the V coming towards it. And he said when this bass got under his lure, it didn't like boil over it and jump out and grab it and tackle it like they do sometimes up here in the north. He said that fish came up to it, opened his mouth, and the water went down like somebody had flushed the toilet, and the lure went with it. And that bass just sucked it into the vortex. And Pat said he set the hook, and that thing just took him for a ride. 6 pounds, 11 ounces. This is a personal best. His previous was 6 pounds, 2 ounces. And that fish was just a beast. And I was so excited because I was like, in the last few minutes, Pat hooked it up. We're done. So I was getting kind of bored. Not bored, just kind of, when I know I have to travel, I get antsy. So I was ready to roll, and I was standing next to Pat, and he was fishing still a little, and I knew Doug was trying to get his big fish. I don't think Doug ever got anything over like 4 pounds, but he had a couple really good ones. And that's just how it goes down there. I think my last trip, I might have caught 15 or 20 fish per day and nothing over 3 pounds. But I mean, who's complaining about that? I mean, really. So anyway, when everything is said and done, we're all finished up and I'm standing there with Pat. He's on fire because he just caught his 6 pound, 11 ouncer. I had my 7 pounder under my belt. I was feeling good. And I was like, well, what the heck? I'll just cast next to you and we'll just chit chat while we wait for Doug to finish out. And I'm throwing this plastic worm, and I never fish plastics because I don't have the patience. And I had this plastic worm, a 3/8 ounce lure. It's kind of heavy. And I would throw this thing and it would just kind of go dink on the bottom pretty quick. And then I would go bounce, bounce, and let it fall back down. And, you know, I didn't get any bites. And then second cast, I throw it out and it went boom, hit the ground. And I went bounce, bounce, and let it hit the ground. And then I let it sit and I went to go bounce it the next time, but I went dunk and my rod just went dunk. You could tell it was like into something. And I thought maybe I'm in grass. And before I gave it another tug to see if it was being held, I just watched the line and I saw the line move to the right a little bit, and I reeled out the slack and I set the hook. And man, it was heavy. I was like, man, whatever that is a decent fish. And I start reeling down on it. And then as I'm holding it, putting pressure, my rod's shaking. And I'm like, why is my rod shaking? And I look down and my drag is peeling. It's like, and I have my drags locked down pretty tight. I had the XD3 Pro Halo. I love that rod. Plenty of backbone, 7.3 medium heavy. I had 30-pound braid. These fish were not line shy. We had no leaders. Weren't using much fluoro and any of that stuff. We were just using straight braid. And I had plenty of power and beef, and I was pulling on this fish, and I finally got it up to the grass. I couldn't get any further, and I didn't have my boots because I was getting ready to get in the car. I thought we were going to be riding. Pat luckily had his boots, goes running down, grabs this fish, and after he grabs it, he just starts saying, "This is an 8. This is an 8. This is an 8." And we were freaking out. So it gets it up. We weigh it. It was 7.11, so it wasn't quite 8, but it was like 7.5 pounds. And I just was like on cloud 9. I couldn't even explain how that felt. Within the last probably 10 casts of the trip, I pegged my second personal best within 2 days. It was amazing. But now I want to tell you something. You're probably wondering like, well, Joe, stop talking. Show me the footage. I keep my SD cards in a little card that looks like this. It's little, and you can pull these cards out. They fit right in there. It's safekeeping. I can put it in my wallet. Safekeeping. So after Ashburn, we were looking at the footage. About 3-4 hours down the road, we pulled off in Rennes, Georgia. And I went into the Marathon and used the bathroom. Doug says, I want to stop driving. If you can drive, I'm going to take a nap in the back. And I'm like, cool. We switch seats, we drive away. Even after that, we went and bought food, but I don't know that I had my cash in my wallet. So somewhere between that gas station buying food and the trip home, my wallet's gone. And all my footage on all my SD cards are in my wallet. I have no footage whatsoever. And I had it all. I had 3 cards full. I had every personal best catch fight I've heard. I have all the woohoos, all the best footage I probably have ever had, ever. And my card's gone. They're gone. All of it. So I don't know. Something weird though. I have a weird feeling somehow I'm going to come across that wallet again. And I'm not sure why I feel that way. Maybe I'm just being, hopelessly hopeful. Maybe I'm thinking a good Samaritan grabbed it and maybe they'll just send it home to me to my address. Maybe it's not lost like I think. Maybe it's sitting somewhere obvious and stupid and we just haven't seen it, but we've looked everywhere. If you were to ask me to go keep looking or ask 3 more questions or trace my step, I've done it all. There's nothing left to do. I just can't believe I lost it, but that's the bad news. And then the secondarily bad news is I flew my drone and took some of the footage that you've seen through this video. And luckily, the drone captures at the same time that it's flying some of the video to the phone, but it also captures better footage to the SD card. Well, that SD card was in the SD card holder in my wallet too, so all the clean footage of that's gone, but at least I had some footage from the phone, which isn't great, but it's passable. But worse than all that, when I brought my drone back overhead to bring it down for a landing, something went wrong and it went into a tailspin and just hit the dirt and it's broken. I thought, no big deal. I got the incidental damage coverage for DJI. I should be good. I get on, I look on the internet, and it ran out in February. So I contacted DJI and I said, dudes, I've had 2 drones, 2 incidental damage packages. I've never had a claim. Can you just hook a brother up and just fix my drone one time? Out of 2 drones and 2 coverages, can you just hook me up? And honestly, if they don't, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I might try to do a project and try to fix the drone. I might just sell it as is, try to get, $80, $100 for it and just call it a day and be done with the drone game. Cause I don't use it that much, but worse than all of that, I lost the footage of all the fish, but, that's a bummer. It's a bummer. I think I'm going to do some videos on better ways to protect and keep and store things, but you could do everything you think you can do, but there's always going to be something that can go wrong. And that's just the way that it is. And I think the most important thing is try not to walk away from a situation like this and say, this sucks and I'm so sad. And dude, I had 2 personal bests in 2 days. I mean, what am I complaining about? And I have scales, witnesses, and photos, and I have memories. So videos aren't everything. It sure would have helped this one be more interesting for you to watch. But that all said, it is what it is. Hopefully I get the footage one day, and if I do, you will see it. Stellar weekend in Georgia. I appreciate you guys coming and watching the Capital Bass Fishing channel and watching my videos. I'm going to get amped up here. Weather's cracking in Virginia. I'm going to be on the water more. So yeah, I'm back. Let's do it. Take care, guys. Tight lines.